Alright.
That finished.
Yeah,
Do you have anything?
finish that fish part.
Give me my fish. Fish nugget. Hey, Gary! How's that thing going through the trout?
Alright, monitor, my friend.
Did it save?
Yeah, I think so. It's an online-based game. Hope it does.
Again, if it doesn't get it. Speaking of fishing. Wonder if a fish really wins. Hey, are you ready? You're fish.
Oh! Hey, oh.
By a fish hook. Got eaten by a fish.
Alright, we're in Axe.
Act 1!
And we're in Part 2. Axe 2!
Bible!
Alright. Paul reaches Athens. The Christians in Thessalonica quickly sent Paul and Silas on by night to Berea. When they got there, they went to the Jewish synagogue. The people there were more generous in spirit than those in Thessalonica. They received the word with considerable eagerness, searching the scriptures day by day to see if what they were hearing was indeed the case. Many of them became believers, including some of the well-born Greek women, and quite a few men. But when the Jews from Thessalonica knew that the word of God had been proclaimed by Paul and Berea, too, they came there as well, stirring up trouble and whipping up the crowd. So the Christians quickly sent Paul away as far as the sea coast, while Silas and Timothy remained behind. Those who were conducting Paul brought him all the way to Athens, where he told them to tell Silas and Timothy to join him as soon as possible. Then they left him there. So Paul waited in Athens. While he was there, his spirit was stirred up as he saw the whole city simply full of idols. He argued in the synagogue with the Jews and the God-fearers, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Some of the Epicureans and Stoic philosophers were disputing with him. So, pretty much, people were going after him, right?
Yeah.
And then what did they do? What did his friends do?
Leave them.
Well, they kind of like stowed him away. Like put him in a cargo crate and just like help him get out.
Actually,
Yeah, like
I can't go quick.
well, something. Like we don't know exactly what it is.
It's kind of like the Mr. Beast video where he runs away from his friends and he gets put in a box. And it gets shipped away.
So yeah, so it's kind of like, so it's like smuggling. They smuggled Paul because if people knew where he was, they'll try killing him.
Alright,
So once he got to Athens, he was waiting for Timothy and
got it.
right. And so while I was there, though, he spent time in the synagogue. Good job. And then he also was there debating with a lot of the Greek philosophers.
Yeah.
Cool off in here. And to bring it up, you gotta
Oh. Okay. Matt, let's go Bible.
What can this word scatterer be on about? Some were saying. He seems to be proclaiming foreign divinities, declared others, since he was preaching Jesus and anastasis. Anastasis means resurrection. So, they took him up to the Areopagus. Are we able to know, they said, what this new teaching really is that you are talking about? You are putting very strange ideas into our minds. We'll like to find out what it all means. All the Athenians and the foreigners who live there spent their time simply and solely in telling and hearing the latest knowledge. So they're treating like what Paul was talking about, like kind of like reading a good old fiction book.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very interesting proposition. Tell me more.
Yeah. So like this, it's like, oh, I forget who. I don't want to. Oh, it's kind of like this, right? It's pretty. Think about it. Wrap around it. What is it?
What is it? There seems to be an increasing fashion in the sporting world, especially in sports that originate in Europe, for World Cup contests and similar events organized in geographical regions. Unless you are a very avid sports fan, these events seem to come tumbling over one another all the time. One minute it's football, soccer, another it's rugby, another it's cricket. The American sporting calendar doesn't look quite the same, but the annual round of American football, hockey, baseball, and even golf seems to rattle by too, with continual competitions to right and left. When a team is playing in one of these multi-sided tournaments, the coaches know they have to be prepared to do battle with many different types of opponents. And what we English call football, the Germans have a reputation for thoroughness, the Brazilians for outrageous flair, the Italians for a sense of style, and so on. It's so good getting ready for a game against Holland as though you're about to play Argentina, and so on. So it's saying like football, like pretty much sports in general, right? Like in Europe and in the United States, like there's always sports going. And like when you're a coach of like a team, you gotta know like the opposition you're playing against and their style. Luke has shown us how the gospel matches up against two major opponents, the zealous Jews and synagogues around Turkey and now in northern Greece, and the economic and political forces of the Roman Empire. But there is an entire world of thought, and I mean world of thought, which we haven't yet had on stage. This is huge. This is the hugely important spirit of the prevailing ancient philosophies. They conditioned how thousands of ordinary people saw the world, what they thought of as reasonable and unreasonable, what they thought about the gods, what they thought human life was for and how best you should live it. Millions who had never studied philosophy, who maybe even couldn't read or write for themselves, were nonetheless deeply influenced by the major currents of thought that were debated in the schools. Just as plenty of people today who have never studied philosophy or economics are massively influenced by the popular presentations in the media of large and complex ideas. And now Luke is taking Paul to where he must meet the ancient philosophies head on, Athens. This is a different team. You can't just say what you say in the synagogue, or even what you said in a hurry in Lystia. This demands a different gameplay, a different strategy. Luke is building us up for a big set piece. One of the classic scenes in the whole book. Athens is a major showdown between the new young faith and the old. Established, tried, and tested philosophies of the Western world, which still in various modern guises, dominate people's thinking. Until we thought through this confrontation, we are not ready for the global contest. It is by no means clear that Paul intended to go to Athens, or having done that, to go on to Corinth. Philippi stood on Via Ignata, the high road to Rome. From there, you would naturally go west through Thessalonica, across northern Greece, and take a boat across a narrow strait to Brindisi, on the southeastern coast, the heel of Italy, and so on the Rome itself. What more natural, since Paul had been commanded by God to go to northern Greece, than that he should now go on through northwest Macedonia, all the way along the road to the sea, and then, who knows, maybe on to Caesar's own city. That might have been natural, but it wasn't. It seems what the Holy Spirit had in mind. One day we could see Paul musing about it in 1921. But not yet. The reason he goes to Berea, which is off the Via Egnatia, to the south, is that the Thessalonian Christians bundled him off there as being more off the beaten track. And once there, he seemed to have been less than usual master of his own movement, with the local believers putting him on a boat to go, not west to the capital of the Roman world, but south to the ancient capital of the Greek one, get the philosophy sorted out, and the politics can follow in due course. First, though, the welcome interlude at Berea. What a relief to find some people who are actually prepared to say, in effect, well, we hadn't ever thought of this sort of thing before, but let's have a look at the scriptures and see if it's true. That is, again and again, all a preacher can really ask for. Don't take it from me, he would say. Go home and study the scriptures for yourself and see how it all fits together. But by now, inevitable happens, and zealous Jews arrive at Thessalonica, hot on Paul's trail. This time, it is only Paul who is packed off, while the others stay. Perhaps to help new believers become firmly established. From Berea, which is somewhat inland, he is taken down to the coast and put on a ship, sailing round to Athens. There he was, alone, in the great intellectual capital of the ancient world. And it was full of idols and ideas and intellectual and cultural novelties of every sort. 1 second, I need to take a sip of water. Man. I feel like I need to stand up.
Actually,
I feel like a little bloated from the Mexican we just had. What a relief to find some people who are actually prepared to say, in effect, well, we hadn't ever thought. Oh, so he got to Athens, right?
Yeah.
And it was full of idols.
Yeah.
And ideas and intellectual and cultural novelties of every kind. Luke's comment on the latter point is a bit sarcastic, since new in the ancient world was one of the worst sneers you could offer, especially about an idea. Old was best. Everyone knew that. Mere novelty was ephemeral. Here today and gone tomorrow. But if you were interested in temples and idols and every kind of religious cult, Athens was the place. It had everything, including some cultural symbols which would have strongly confirmed Paul's Jewish perception that idol worship went closely hand in hand with sexual immorality. A glance at vast paintings, statues, cult objects, and so on in museums today leaves little to the imagination. Worship these gods and your body, and everybody else's too, becomes a toy. No question that what a devout Jew would think about that. Paul was not short of places to go and people to talk to. He did what he usually did in the synagogue, but we have no report of the reaction. More interesting to look at this point, he argues in the marketplace, which in Athens was a marketplace of ideas as well of other commodities. And there it was that he met the great philosophical schools of the day, the Epicureans and Stoics. So he meets these two people, right? The Epicureans and Stoics.
Yeah.
He's going to give us briefly what those two school of thoughts believed in.
Are you guys stand up while playing video games?
No, I'm just standing up right now as I just need to stand while reading. Otherwise, I'm just going to fall asleep. Briefly, the Epicureans held a theory according to which the world and the gods were a long way away from one another, with little or no communication. The result was that one should get on with life as best one could, discovering how to gain maximum pleasure from a quiet, sedate existence. So the Epicureans believe the gods are far away and they don't care about really us, really. Like, be quiet, be tame, but enjoy life. The Stoics, however, believe that divinity lay within the present world and within each human being, so that this divine force, though hardly personal, just eating my desk. The
5,000 years later.
He only gets that far.
A billion years later.
He gets that far.
A billion years later. Take a slowly here. Okay, but
the Stoics, however, believe that divinity lay within the present world and within each human being, so that this divine force, though hardly personal, could be discovered and harnessed. Good human living, then virtue, consisted in getting in touch with and living according to this inner divine rationality. What way Jew or Christian stated either of those? We are about to find out. But the request for Paul to speak at the Areopagus, correct? How do you say that? Let's look it up.
I can't even see it. I can't even see it.
There we go.
Areopagus. 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 Areopagus.
Using my headset off.
Areopagus.
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 You're doing it like a billion times.
Dude, I'm like, I don't know why, I'm just struggling on this word.
Areopagus.
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 Why did you
I'm just gonna struggle hard on that word, man. Well, okay, but the request for Paul to speak at the Areopagus, the highest court in the city, set on the rock from which one could look down on the famous marketplace and across the still more famous Acropolis, with its spectacular temples, was not as... Oh yeah, that was that picture was, Char. So that is the rock that people used to stand and debate on.
The rock. Oh! Get it? Ah! The rock!
And then from there, they will be able to see Acropolis. So let's look what that looks like. There we go.
Thank you. You ready?
Oh, okay. So Char, they'll stand on a rock and be able to see these temples. Alright. But the request for Paul to speak at the Areopagus, the highest court in the city, set on a rock from which one could look down on the famous marketplace and across the still more famous Acropolis, with its spectacular temples, but not as friendly and innocuous as it sounds. It wasn't a matter of, well, here's an interesting fellow, let's see what he has to say. It contained a double-veiled threat. This man, they said, seems to be a preacher of fallen divinities. Well, yes, in a sense, though that was based on their misunderstanding of the fundamental content of Paul's message, which was Jesus in the resurrection. Resurrection, which in Greek is anastasis, seems to have sounded to them like another god, or rather, since the word is feminine, a goddess. Jesus and his female consorts. Who on earth are they? What is this word scatterer trying to say? A term word scatterer is full of content. This man who scatters words all over the place like a jackdaw, picking up interesting things and dropping half of them on the way back to his nest. It must be a type of bird.
Jackson.
Jackdaw. Oh, okay. So they're like straight up like dissing Paul. Especially when they use the word scatterer. It just sounds like Paul just grabbed random ideas everywhere and he'd be like, yeah! Resurrection! Jesus! And they're like, gosh, this guy's annoying. But then he had to go up there and present a defense. Not a defense, like actually calling out to Yahweh. The redeeming story.
It's like this. With in hand. Scatter.
In particular, the charge of preaching foreign divinities was the charge, famously and classically on which Socrates, the greatest philosopher of all time, had been tried and condemned. Athens may have been interested in new ideas, but divinities from elsewhere could easily get you into trouble. Serious trouble, especially if someone proclaiming them was starting a secret society with mysteries only open to the initiates. Are we permitted to know? They asked with veiled sarcastic threat. What this new teaching is all about? Are you allowed to tell us these secret doctrines, or are they only for those you will collect into a dangerous little gang? In other words, you better get your philosophy sorted out, or we have other questions we may want to ask as well. Are you a danger to our state? Paul's has given the chance of a lifetime, but also a multi-layered challenge which will stretch his theological and rhetorical skills in quite a new way. So the Athens, they think he's preaching like crazy random stuff. And so they give him a chance to defend what his beliefs are, but it's also like, are you trying to mess people up, trying to get a secret little like religious gang? Because like, if so, like they could have charges to get you killed. Second part. What part's this? Bible. Right. So Paul stood up in the midst of the Areopagus. Men of Athens, he said, I see that you are in every way an extremely religious people. For as I was going along and looking at your object of worship, I saw an altar with the inscription, to an unknown God. Well, I'm here to tell you about what it is that you are worshiping in ignorance. The God who made the world and everything in it, the one who is Lord of heaven and earth, doesn't live in temples made by human hands, nor is he looked after by human hands, as though he needed something, since he himself gives life and breath to everyone. He made from one stock every race of humans to live on the whole face of the earth, allotting them their properly ordained times and the boundaries for their dwellings. The aim was that they would search for God and perhaps reach out for him and find him. Indeed, he is actually not far from each one of us, for in him we live and move and exist, as also some of your own poets have put it, for we are his offsprings. Well then, if we really are God's offsprings, we ought to suppose that the divinity is like gold or silver or stone, formed by human skill and ingenuity. Damn. I know, I'm just having a hard time with a lot of words. Just good few words.
You don't lose, brother Corey!
Thanks, friend. You might want to look at the span. Goes out.
Ingenuity.
Ingenuity. Oh, of course. Ingenuity. Okay.
Look at Fury. Step. Okay, then.
Well then, if we really are God's...
Spit.
I did, yeah.
Damn! Okay, like,
We ought not to suppose that the divinity is like gold or silver or stone, formed by human skill and ingenuity. That was just ignorance. The time for it has passed, and God has drawn a veil over it. Now instead, he commands the whole human race, everywhere, to repent, because he has established a day on which he intends to call the world to account with full and proper justice by a man whom he has appointed. God has given all people his pledge of this by raising this man from the dead. When they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some of them ridiculed Paul, but others said, "We'll give you another hearing about this." So Paul went out from their presence, but some people joined him and believed, including Dionysius, a member of the court of the Areopagus, and a woman named Damaris, and others with them.
stop doing!
One of the signs of being really good at chess is that you can play more than one opponent at the same time. Sometimes grandmasters would put on a display where they play several different people all at once, walking from one chessboard to the next and making the next move, leaving a string of opponents with only one game each to concentrate on, baffled and eventually defeated. Something like that is the effect Luke intends to create with the summary of what Paul said on the Areopagus. We're going to take 2 bites at this cherry because it's so important, so unique, it's so dense, that it's better to give ourselves a space to mull it over properly, not splitting it in two in the process but reading the whole thing twice. I assume, by the way, that Acts is a summary of what Paul said on that day. I make this assumption for 2 reasons. First, there is a tradition in Greek history writing, which Luke certainly knows and is certainly imitating, that even if you don't have a full record of what was said on a particular occasion, you ought to make something that more or less summarizes what would have been said. Second, this is the Paul who, when preaching to friends, went on and on past midnight so that someone fell out of a window asleep. Can you really believe that when he was given his big chance in the highest form in the Greek world, he spoke only for 2 minutes? Which is roughly how long, even going slowly, it takes to read verses 22 to 31 aloud in the Greek. But even if Luke has telescoped things together, we can still see what Paul is up to. It's a highly skilled performance, giving a vivid example of what Paul meant when he said, writing later to Corinth, that it was his aim to take every thought captive to obey the Messiah. He is not just content to press the buttons of the local culture, to give a nod to an inscription here and a poet there, to show, as it were, that what he has to say hooks in nicely to their way of thinking, so that his message isn't really so very different from what they know already. Nothing of the kind. The grand truth in the suggestion, though, comes right at the beginning, when Paul talked about the famous altar with the inscription, "To an unknown God." What might this be all about? One of the other philosophical options available to a serious first-century pagan, discussed by Caesarea in the book written about a century before Paul's day, is what became known as the academic, or the view taken at one time at least by the academy founded by Plato himself. According to the academic point of view, there is simply not enough evidence for us to be able to tell whether the gods exist or not. And if they do, what if anything they want from us? This can breed a shoulder-shrugging, couldn't-care-less attitude, or it might produce, and Paul gives it the benefit of the doubt here, a kind of humility, an openness, a readiness for something new. There is all the difference in the world between someone who says, "I know we'll never know much about the gods, and actually I'm quite happy about that. I'm just going to offer a lamb on this altar once a year in case, and I hope that does whatever needs doing because I would rather live my own life my own way." And someone who says, I can't help believing that there must be somewhere some divine being who is actually more than we have realized and more important than we have usually supposed. So I'm keeping the windows of my heart open, and I'm hoping that one day I'll find out. The first we might call closed. Not to. Why? Hey, love. My brain is having a hard time today with. It's people who don't know if there's a god. Agnostic. Yeah, agnosticism. Okay, I was going to say that right. Agnosticism. Close. Agnosticism. We don't know, we can't know, and I like it like that. The second we might call open agnosticism. Or even humble agnosticism. We don't seem to know at present, but that means it quite possibly, perhaps even likely, that there is something more that we can know in principle if only we could discover how, and I would love to know if we could. Actually, you could call the first inconsistent agnosticism, since it professes absolute certainty that we can't know anything, which is paradoxical to say the least. In that case, the second could be consistent agnosticism, being agnostic about agnosticism itself. And it is the second that Paul assumes was intended by whoever put up the altar to an unknown God. In fact, he begins and ends the address with the question of ignorance and what God is doing about it. Having begun with this particular altar, he ends with a remarkable statement that God has been well aware that people have been ignorant, but that this was for a period of time only, and the period has now run out. Here we see, creeping up upon the Athenian listeners, an idea which must have been very strange to them, that history is moving in a forward direction with a divinely ordained goal in view, and that it matters to discern where we are within that particular plan. This is, of course, a deeply Jewish view, and it prepares the way for the decisive announcement of what God has done in Jesus and what he has thereby promised to do. But the theme of ignorance, at the start and finish of the address, is Paul's way both of starting at a point within the Athenians' own complex and many-sided systems of worship, and having found there an open window which might just let in some light, declaring that the academics had a point, but that the time for that point is now past. Simultaneously, of course, he is declaring, over it gets a sharp hit in verse 19, that his hearers are indeed permitted to know what it is he is saying. He has nothing to hide, but rather something to reveal. But reading further, we quickly discover that Paul was not simply constructing a worldview theology out of bits and pieces of the local culture, in order, as the phrase goes, to discover what God might be doing in this place and to do it with him. According to Paul, the main thing that God was doing in Athens was shaking his head in sorrow and warning of imminent judgment. Because Athens was full of temples and the local people were constantly bringing sacrifices and offerings to gods and goddesses of every possible kind. And the God who made the whole world, Paul, the background as it still does, one of the wonders of the architectural world and one of the most beautiful buildings ever built. Nice job, says Paul in effect, but it misses the point. Sies magnificat, mias sinist Paul le due. And as for bringing animal sacrifices to the true God, well, this is the wrong way around. It is he who gives everything to us, not the other way about. At this point, Paul is close to the short, breathless statement. And in particular, the one thing we should be clear about is this. Whatever God may be like, he can be sure that all these idols, gold, silver, stone, or whatever, are similar in missing the point. They too are merely a sign of ignorance, of human blundering about, sensing a presence, a divinity, but not really knowing what to do about it or why. So far, so Jewish, all this is very typical of the anti-pagan stance taken by many Jewish apologists at the time and since, and it conforms closely, as Paul reminds the Thessalonians, to what he said in his initial preaching to them. It is the message about the Creator God, which is the foundation of all good news, all gospel. Without a Creator God, even such good news as he might have, there is hope for bliss yet to come, is purchased at the cost of very bad news. This bliss will not involve the rescue of the present beautiful creation. With the Creator God, we know that even though things seem to have gone very badly wrong, in certain respects you are not simply in the hands or the disposal of a bunch of incompetent, mutually squabbling, or actually malevolent deities. People sometimes grumble that Paul doesn't seem to have put much gospel into this speech, but actually the whole thing is good news from start to finish. The specific good news of Jesus Christ grows directly out of this doctrine of creation. But to see this more clearly, we need another section.
Okay.
We can start.
Machine Simulator.
Love you. power slave, yeah. And be right back. Boop. Yeah. I actually love seeing your cactus head just popping out.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm. It just looks like the cactus swimming when you have it in the right angle.
Like that.
Mm-hmm. Like that, yeah. That's perfect.
So do you like that trout theory?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, how to go through water? Yeah.
Look at God. I'm done again.
The bite pet symbol. No, like here, look how powerful it is. See that metal? Look. See that metal?
Uh-huh.
Here, straight. Okay. Meow, meow. Yeah, yeah. Open. Look how strong this is. Get that puppet!
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for the
It's your friend today. Yay! One down. still see chat.
Okay. Let's not do that, okay, though?
Oh crap! That's such a big fish. Looks like this time. It's like that's 2 times for this fish. And it's like, nope, I am. Another one I did. That was spirit. Woo! I would just stick up to the tree. That makes no sense. Practice. Never tried this. Oh boy. Oh, it is. a name. Go! It's a block. I was about to say, I'm never gonna get hit.
Twelve minutes, my friend.
What?
Dipping in 12 minutes.
Yay! Cam! Owie!
What was it? Shut up. We have a score to settle.
Ellie, yeah, you're better than that.
Damn. Oh, just barely won.
Oh,
This-
God.
This is impossible for some reason. I don't understand. Next time I'll try something new on this punching bag.
Punching bag! You're a punching bag. Owie! I like your armor, dude. You got built up for it. La 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 la. Owie. No distracting, no. You're trying to get me from my spawn, bro. That's a mess. Stop. Oh, yeah. You're right. Owie! Yeah. Ow! Being a baby on this. We just come in and be like back there. That's what you can do. Ow. Let's play my favorite game. Seems like they added an update, Corey. Really?
Yeah.
What? Did I just get notified by a developer? Of course. I just got notified by a developer. Mayhem! Oh yeah! Oh yeah! I can get rid of my chair, to be honest. That's what I'm gonna do. Oh god.
4 minutes, my friend, and we're dipping.
Yay! Okay. Ow. Get off that. Ow. 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 My body. Yes, get shots. Get ready. My pet just like stabbed through my head. Different elephant. Meow dot and drive. Meow needed.
Alright, friend. Alright, guys. It's us. We got bounce. Peace.